Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Glowy Boy Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Quinn. Join me today is Nigel, who's back on the show. How's it going, Nigel?
Not too bad, thanks, Kai.
Yeah, not too bad. Finally, a win to talk about. It feels like it was the sequel to the Tottenham game a month ago, where we were crap for large parts of the game. The opposition were arguably the better team, but a Ronaldo hat trick kind of bailed us out. So, what was your thoughts on the game overall?
Another very poor performance, especially at home against the bottom team. When you take a two-goal lead and are pegged back by the bottom team through absolutely woeful defending, it just puts the whole season in perspective. How those poor season ticket holders can watch those performances week in and week out, it's very hard for them.
Yeah, it really was abysmal at times yesterday. The back four were appalling, but I was confused by the midfield selection. It was very unbalanced. Lingard, Pogba, and Fernandes, and Pogba at the base of the midfield. I knew as soon as I seen that we were going to give up chances on the counter attack, and that's how it turned out. I think that's pretty much how Norwich scored their goals on the counter attack. The second one in particular was straight through the middle, because Pogba does not have the defensive discipline to play that role. So it was a very odd selection from Ralph Rangnick, wasn't it?
Barry, I couldn't see the selection of Lingard coming at all. I mean, he sat dolefully on the bench week in and week out, just counting the games till he gets the opportunity to leave the club wherever he wants to go. So to bring him in at this stage was just, I didn't get it at all. But Pogba was the usual Pogba, strolling around if it's a five-side game, not remotely interested. He thought he may have got a head injury at one stage, damaged his hairstyle that he pays £500 every week to get done. So that's the type of guy we want rid of. These guys are just inexcusable for footballers. They're an absolute sham.
Yeah, Maguire caught him with his studs, and he headbutted Ronaldo in another game. Maguire seems to be taken away from Phil Jones and injuring his own teammates. Yeah, Pogba received some boos when he was substituted yesterday from the crowd, and also when he was leaving the pitch at the end. Um, there was also a chance of F off Pogba and stuff like that. When we saw kind of nine players out of the 11 were pretty poor yesterday. Um, why do you think Paul Pogba was singled out?
I think it's a long-standing grievance. It certainly is on my behalf. I mean, 5 years of absolute rubbish. I can think of maybe two, possibly three games in 5 years where he's actually put the effort in and looked as if he cared about the club. The man's been paid an absolute fortune and has never cared about anybody else but himself, especially at holiday periods and one thing or another. Sometimes he wouldn't return to the club. He was supposed to be injured and he was at his brother's wedding in Paris, dancing about on the floor. The guy's just an enigma to most of us who support the club. Everybody who watches United wants to play for them in their dreams, and this guy has everything going for him. Superb footballer if he bothers to turn up. Most times he doesn't. That's why I got booed yesterday. I'd be amazed if he was picked again. But there's so few players to pick. What are they going to do?
Yeah, we have to be honest and say 6 years at Old Trafford have been an absolute failure. He just hasn't produced the goods on a consistent basis. On yesterday again, it was another performance where it was half-hearted. And the fans obviously recognised that. Um, yeah, but he was playing in a role that just doesn't suit him either. Being the defensive midfielder, we know he just doesn't work hard enough, and that we've seen him even for one of the Norwich goals. I think it was the first one where he's just jogging back, and I don't know why Ralph decided to put him in that role. Uh, he must have known that we were going to concede chances by picking that unbalanced midfield. So maybe he just went with the idea of that we'll try and outscore Norwich because they're the bottom team. Because Fred McTominay obviously weren't available. He could have played Matic, and actually Matic has been playing better than Pogba lately. So I'm surprised that he didn't start yesterday's game.
Yeah, that surprised me too. But in his post-match interview, the manager wasn't too happy about the crowd reaction to Pogba. But Ralph Rangnick's only been at the club 3 months. You and I and everybody else has to watch this consistent garbage from Pogba for 5 years. So I don't find any excuses at all for the abuse that he got coming up. He got what he deserved. He just doesn't care.
Yeah, I suppose we could also argue that like Harry Maguire has arguably been our worst player this season, and he could on occasion he would have deserved to be booed as well. Would you agree?
Oh, without a doubt, he's been a major flop. When you compare the Liverpool centre half signed for about the same money, I mean the difference in class between the two players, Maguire just isn't up to the mark. Hopefully, the new manager will come in and make big changes in the back four, especially there at centre half. The first thing he should be done, Kyle, is he should be removed from the captaincy of the club. The guy's not good enough to lead any team.
No, definitely not. And he wasn't good enough yesterday either. I thought the back four as a whole were absolutely abysmal yet again. Um, like I said yesterday, I don't think any of those four should be starting in August. And if they are, then we're in serious trouble. Things aren't going to change. It's going to be a hell of a task to replace an entire back four in one window. So I'm thinking that maybe one or two of them are going to stay, but yeah, those four that played yesterday are certainly not the future of this club.
No, no, they're both substandard. All four are, but particularly the fullbacks. I think we have four currently on the books, and none of them is really up to the standard. Wouldn't get anywhere near the substitutes bench for City, Liverpool, or Chelsea, for example. They're that poor.
Yeah, Dallo for the first goal was beaten very easily, and then Tellez was too narrow, and it was an easy header then at the back post for the Norwich player. He was totally unmarked. I mean, we've seen this over and over again this season, haven't we? It's just shockingly poor.
Well, Teller seems to be another one of these roving left backs that feels that he can go in and he can cross the ball or he can take corners on both sides, but totally is ineffective and useless at the basics of defending. And if he's wearing the shirt of the left back, he should know the defensive to get tight, close down crosses, and work hard at the back. These guys just stroll back. He was another one like Pogba yesterday. He wasn't on back, probably.
Yeah, the second goal, you look at Tellez there and you don't see him really busting a gut there to get back when he was caught out of position. It was just an absolute catalogue of errors, really. We easily could have went 3-2 down. Um, like we've alluded to already, Ronaldo on De Gea bail us out again. Um, how many times this season is that going to happen? I think Ronaldo is now responsible for, in terms of winning goals that he's got, that's gained us 13 points. De Gea, it's anybody's guess how many points that he's responsible for winning us over the last 10 years. Um, I suppose you could argue Alanga did put in a lot of effort yesterday. He got the assist for the first goal when he pounced upon the defensive error. But I don't think he was particularly brilliant overall. So yeah, it was just the Ronaldo and the Gay show, just yet again. Where would we be without them?
Oh, very, very close to the bottom four, without a doubt. But look at the big, strong save that he made with his right hand when Norwich were starting to dominate the game, hadn't got back into the game. I mean, that's world class, that level of save. And yeah, you've one star at the other end and the goalkeeper. But I must feel sorry for him. I mean, the sort of players that have been playing in front of him the entire season from last August, it's a wonder he's kept at such a high level because it's just been down to him, really.
What did you make of his interview last week after the Everton game? He seemed to be quite forthright and honest about the situation, but I think he could have said a hell of a lot more. Actually, I think he was holding back about certain teammates. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, well, it's a positive thing that somebody has the guts to come out and say that the team isn't good enough, certain players aren't good enough. He could have said a lot more, but I suppose in deference to people he trains with day in and day out. But if the manager sees that people aren't playing well enough, I can see justifiable reason now for Tellers not starting another game, even though Shaw's just had surgery. But it won't happen until after the Arsenal game. I would imagine if we're out of the top four race, if we lose against Liverpool, as most people predict, and then perhaps get a draw at Arsenal if we're lucky, I think that'll be the top four place gone. And I would expect Fernandes to be given an opportunity to play every game at left back because Tellus is just absolutely useless.
Yeah, he is, and so is Dallo, and the other two, one Bissaka now is just a write-off, and Luke Shaw has been out of form all season. He's become clearly become complacent, and he's starting to look a bit overweight again. So the fullback situation looks pretty bleak at the moment, and it's going to be a lot of work to do for the new manager. Jadon Sancho seems to have caught the disease now. After a real bright spell, in kind of January, February, March, he's kind of gone off the boil now, hasn't he?
He has, and it's a pity because he was playing well at that stage. But the team's not playing with any purpose or any strategy. We've talked about this on podcast before, Kyle, and he's suffering for that. I mean, you don't know whether to run in case you get the pass. You don't know who's going to deliver the pass. You run into space and nobody sees you, and they're passing across the back again the way they used to do under Van Half. I mean, he's an exciting forward with a great career ahead of him, but he's, as you say, he's dropped back in his last 5 6 weeks.
They play the ball behind each other quite a lot, and it's really frustrating. It's so disjointed. There's no pattern whatsoever. Um, it's just depressing to watch week in, week out. We've now reached a stage as United fans, where we're actually being more entertained watching our two biggest rivals play each other. Last weekend and this weekend, it's a really sad state for Furs, isn't it?
It is, but it's a fact of life, and will be until this new manager is given the players to come in that he can get into his own mind field. I mean, if you remember, there's a lot of comparisons between the current team and the team that got relegated in 1973. Now, unlike you, I'm old enough to, I was a teenager when that happened. But when Tommy Dock went down into the second division, as it was then, he came back and told them he would be back the following season playing the United way. So we had Stevie Coppell on one wing and Gordon Hill on the other, and two in the centre, and they entertained from start to finish and won that division by a mile. So let's build up our hopes that the new manager will take that on board. But he needs the time. People can't expect miracles. There's so much rubbish, as you know, and so much dead wood in football terms that we have to give him time to unload those players who won't necessarily leave if they can get their money and sit in the reserves at Old Trafford and get paid a fortune.
It would almost be better if we got relegated, because at least then we'd have a chance of actually winning the league.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Nemanja Matic announced his departure this week. What do you think about his United career? I think he's only scored 4 goals in 5 seasons. He tends to be a scorer of great goals rather than a great goal scorer. The one stands out for me is the half volley from 30 yards against Crystal Palace to win the game in stoppage time. But he really has been a disappointment outside of his first season, which was very promising. But overall, I don't think him as a signing has really been a success.
No, definitely not. He has two Premier League medals. He did play and play well for Chelsea. We, as usual, bought a player for too much money at the end of his career. He had one good season, and then the legs went, and he's got slower and slower and slower. I would give it to him that he tries when he's on, but he's got obvious limitations now, and he's made the right decision. As Gary Neville did years ago. He knows he's just not up to the standard, and he's not going to embarrass himself, and he's going to leave. But the other thing is, Kyle, he can afford to leave. They've got so many millions in the bank. These guys, it's just beyond belief the money they get these days.
Yeah, there was 4 players who featured yesterday who are likely to leave in the summer. Um, Matic, Mata, Pogba, and there's one other one. I'm trying to think of who that is. But Cavani is just not available at all anymore. He's just totally given up the ghost. He was a very promising signing. I mean, last season the United fans were in love with him. They were so disappointed that they weren't in the ground to see him play. And this season everyone was looking forward to seeing him, but we've hardly seen him at all. He spent more time not playing than he has. He's been injured apparently more than he's played. So a huge disappointment. And looking back at it, giving him a second year was a big mistake.
It was, sadly, one of my favourite players from last season. He would have got the fans going all right, but you just can't believe the medical bulletins anymore. I think the manager just talks around it simply by saying Edison Cavani's no longer available, or he's not available. He may be back in a few weeks. They don't necessarily go into his injuries anymore, because you don't know whether he's injured or not. He's just really taking the money off the club, and he's in Manchester at the moment, but he's not fit, and who knows when he will be fit.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see him again. Um, so yeah, yesterday, like I said, Lingard was a player missed out there. So four players who won't be at the club featured yesterday. Uh, so Lingard, Mata, Matic, and Pogba, and Cavani's the other one who'll be leaving who didn't feature yesterday. And you could argue there's two young players on the bench there, Garnacho and Hannibal, who are chomping at the bit to get the United careers underway, um, and they didn't feature at all. Do you think it kind of lacks sense really to either start or bring on to sub four players who won't be there in August, and two players who have yet to make United debuts are on the bench and didn't get on? Does that frustrate you as a fan?
Oh, it frustrates me greatly, but the manager, until it's mathematically impossible, I mean, he has to be seen by the board as to try to play the strongest side that they signed, most of them, and they're not going to be dropped completely until the final games of the season. It looks like to me. I see no excuse for going down that route, but he's obviously been told by somebody up above, play them until you can't play them, sort of thing. But the fans are so frustrated by the lack of effort. But those young players need somebody to guide them along, somebody who will give them a bit of a hand. Probably Matic would be the best of that, or certainly Mata would try. Of all the players you listed, the one that I liked most was Mata because he was a classy player. He, like Matic, won Premier League titles with Chelsea, but again, we got him at the end of his career. But the first 2 or 3 years, he scored quite a lot of goals and assists, and his performance at Anfield that famous time will not be forgotten by many.
Yeah, absolutely. Mata has been a fantastic player. Probably is now been at United a wee bit too long. He's hardly played at all in the last two seasons, but we'll definitely remember him fondly. Um, is he's never a player that you'd accuse of lacking effort at all. So very happy to see him playing in the remaining games. Yeah, and Matic would probably be the perfect midfield partner if someone like Hannibal is going to come into the side.
Yeah,
With his experience that he has. Yeah, I'd love to see Garnacho get an opportunity as well. Ronaldo quite kindly give Garnacho the match ball after the game. It was a nice gesture to the young lad. I'm sure he's probably got no more room in his house now for the amount of match balls that he has. I think
no,
that's 60 career hat tricks.
yeah.
Um,
It's fantastic. What a record! There's nobody quite like him. There's no, and he really likes to set records for himself. So you know, of course, that because he's over the 20 goal mark now, he's on the big bonuses now for any goals that he scores for the rest of the season. Even though there are only 5 or 6, I think his immediate bonus is 850,000, which does he or does he not need to get 20 goals for United this season? It's a sign of the times where all these contracts are stipulated by money. Whilst before the Premier League started, there were people who were playing their hearts out week in and week out for very little money and maybe just a win bonus of, say, £30 a game, as was said recently on a podcast. So that's just the signs we live in. But the obvious thing to say, Kyle, is that the wages that we pay a side that has underperformed all season is so close or not or already past that given to City and Liverpool players. It just shows you from top to bottom this club has been run very, very badly.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have the highest wage bill in world football, and we certainly did prior to the January transfer window, and we're certainly not getting value for money. I mean, if the City squad and the Liverpool squad are being paid less than our players, there's something badly wrong at Old Trafford with the decision makers. We've seen more protests yesterday outside the ground. A large, well, a minority of the fans um, decided to stay out until the 17th minute. It was a protest aimed at the 17 years that the Glazers have been in charge of the club. I mean, they all paid for a ticket yesterday, so I don't think it's going to make a dent on the Glazers. They're not going to be um, annoyed by that whatsoever. Sitting in their big mansions in Miami. I think a greater statement for me. Now, I'm not criticizing people for protesting. I'm all for protesting against the owners, but I would disagree with the method. What I would have done yesterday is either not turn up at all or stage a walkout after 17 minutes. But there just doesn't seem to be any cohesiveness among the United fans, because we've seen at the start of the match there was there must have been at least about 65,000 people inside the ground. So it's not going to bother the Glazers, is it, when majority of the fans are not following the protest?
No, it's not going to worry them at all. I mean, I can understand the frustration and why they did it. But as you rightly said to me, when you see the ground, the Theatre of Dreams absolutely packed, it looks like a notional protest. Whilst, as you suggest, if everybody left the ground at a certain point, that would certainly be noticed more forcibly on the media channels. But the most important thing about that, the minute that they chose, is the 17 years since the club was sold by people within the club. You know, there are a mixture of supporters who think that it's all the current malaise at Old Trafford has happened since 2013, since the resignation of Ferguson, and David Gill left on the same day, and we all recognise that was a mistake. This malaise goes right back to 2005, and Ferguson played a key role in that, in trying to persuade the current faithful at that stage to have faith in the Glazers and what they were attempting to do. I could never understand that, and I certainly wouldn't be in the crowd that just believed that this all went wrong in 2013.
Yeah, and David Gill said in 2004 that debt was the road to ruin. And then when the Glazers took over 12 months later, he was telling the fans that it's healthy debt, not necessarily a bad thing. So that really irked a lot of supporters. What happened in 2013 was something that the Glazers wanted from the start. Once Ferguson retired, they wanted to seize more control of the club, and the manager would just become essentially a first team coach. And we've seen Ed Woodward being in charge of the transfer policy, and it's been an absolute disaster from day one. And this is why our rivals, Liverpool and Man City, have totally surpassed us. Season in, season out, we're finishing 30 points behind these teams, and we've now got a squad of players who don't even try on the pitch anymore, and it's just absolutely disgusting, isn't it?
Oh, without a doubt. And people keep throwing the 1 billion figure at that total of expenditure on players. We have bought so many poor players coming to the end of their career as if they're just come to Old Trafford. Like Cavani certainly looks as if he's done to get some money in the bank for when he actually retires. And the scouting, we've talked about it, Kyle. What sort of level of scouting have we have when we're paying 52 million for the likes of Fred? Now, I've heard in recent weeks on social media that people are a bit happier with Fred. Fred will give you plenty of effort, but Fred wouldn't be on the bench for the top three teams in England. Wouldn't be anywhere near it. He's not that quality. He'll try his heart out, but if you pay 52 million in today's money for a midfielder, you need somebody who's going to score a lot of goals and create a lot of chances. He just hasn't done it.
No, he has a wee bit of ability. He has the endeavor, but he's just not top class. If he is going to play, you have to play him further forward to get the best out of him. He's just not a defensive midfielder. But I mean, if we're going to win the Premier League again, whenever that's going to be, he's certainly not going to be in the team. Um, like you say, he wouldn't get on the bench for Liverpool and Manchester City, and probably not even Chelsea either. You mentioned the scouts there, and it was a story that was deeply troubling that came out in recent weeks. Was it Ralph Ranić, when he came in the winter, um, wanted to see the scouting report on Christopher Nkunku, a player who scored over 30 goals for RB Leipzig this season, and who he regards as the best young player in the Bundesliga. And it turned out United didn't have a report on him because they weren't even watching him. So that really troubles me. With regards to our scouts, I mean, did they just solely focus on the Premier League? I mean, they scouted 804 right backs, and they chose Aaron Wan-Bissaka. And currently we're hearing from Samuel Luckhurst that United are looking to sign Calvin Phillips from Leeds. I'm not saying he's a bad player. He's an England international and he played a key role in them getting to the Euros final. But when you sign a player from another Premier League club, he's going to cost a pretty penny. So we'd not be looking to, the European leagues for maybe a cheaper option who might be a better player. But it just seems to be that our scouts seem to be always focused on the Premier League and don't seem to look too far afield. And that story about Christopher Nkunku just really highlighted that.
Yeah, it's a damning indictment of the quality of the people who are in the scouting department. It needs reviewed. I mean, there are young players in France and Spain that other clubs in the Premier League have got for reasonable amounts of money. And we seem to go for the big name and maybe a guy who's older, as I've said already. And I just really can't understand it, you know. And people like Di Maria arrived and went as quickly as he came. I didn't think he fancied the busyness and the endeavour he had to produce every week in the Premier League. He liked to play in the matches in Spain, for example, against Barcelona, those sort of top games where he could show his skills on and off. And then if it was a routine fixture for his team the following Saturday, not as competitive as the Premier League, he could back off a little. But we need to get young, as you say, it's a good point. We need to get younger players who are on the up and want to create a career when they arrive at Old Trafford, not ones that were big names, arriving with big money, going to get more money, want a final contract out of our club. The days of that sort of selection has to be gone.
Yeah, the whole transfer policy has to change, and the whole culture of the club has to change. But that remains to be seen because Richard Arnold is very much the same guy as Ed Woodward, as we've alluded to in previous podcasts. He's a banker and an accountant who went to Bristol University with Woodward. So I'm not really hopeful. I know we seem to be making progress in terms of allowing football people make football decisions, like John Murta and Don Fletcher, but whether they're the right people to making decisions or not, I don't know. I don't think I'm convinced at the moment anyway. So moving on to the player ratings. Um, I'll hand that over to you. So we'll start off with the guy. What's your mark?
Well, the hair I would give a 7. Made a crucial save, and was trying to help the defenders when they were in trouble. So he's always forceful at leading the back four from behind him. Uh, the back four was just absolutely outrageous. I was going to give Tellez a 0, but I've seen that he actually crossed the ball for the second goal, which Ronaldo headed, so he gets a 1 for that. But the rest of it, absolute Dallo 0, absolutely useless from start to finish. Maguire and Lindelof, just the usual 2 3s for me, and they're lucky to get it. Uh, as I say, the only two players are the goalkeeper and Ronaldo. Ronaldo scored a hat trick, has to get an 8. You can't score a hat trick in the Premier League and help your team win when nobody else was contributing to the performance. So a good 8, but the rest of them were just absolutely useless, guys. They hardly worth a rating at all. That bad.
So what does like say Pogba and Lingard and Bruno Fernandes get?
No. Well, Pogba a 0 for me. For Fernandez, with when Ronaldo scoring the goals, uh, Fernandez just doesn't seem to be. I've never thought, I've said to you before, that that's really worked with those two players. I don't think it works particularly well at international level either. Um, Young Alanga looked up, took his time for the tap in for the first goal, so he would get a 4 from me. He doesn't defend terribly well, but that'll come with experience. But at least the other forwards that we have had, like Martial, who's now off on loan, and Rashford, they just put their hair down and run at people and go into cul-de-sacs. At least that young player had the time to look up, see Ronaldo. Ronaldo clearly called for the ball, and he played. It's a simple game if you play it well, up and take your time. So that was a good performance. Uh, Matic gives you as usual and then runs out of steam whether he starts or whether so he would get a 3 for me. But against the bottom team, we should be dictating and dominating that game from start to finish. So those players don't deserve any higher marks than that from me. What do you think?
Yeah, I quite agree. What about Jadon Sancho? A disappointing display yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's about a 3. Couldn't give him any more than a 3.
Yeah, with regards to that Alanga assist for Ronaldo, if that had been Rashford, I think he would have put his head down and blasted it straight at the goalkeeper's legs, and it would have went out for a corner. So yeah, so fair play to Alanga by looking up and picking out
No,
Ronaldo.
definitely agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
the manager's been loyal to Langer. He seems to like him, like pre-season training, and he gives him a chance. And I'm sure he said to Rashford at least two or three times, "Listen, if you want to get back into this team, I want to see you producing." And Rashford hasn't done it, Kyle, and I don't see him starting it on merit at the moment.
yeah, I think after the first training session, Ranić decided that he liked Alanga. You know, he then put him on the bench for his first game in charge against Crystal Palace, and then he hasn't been out of the squad since. And he started quite a few games. Um, so yeah, he's taken a liking to Alanga, but he's not a fan of Rashford. He's been left out of the team quite a lot in the last couple of months, and you'd have to say it deservedly so because he's just not producing it. He's obviously very unhappy and not starting games, but he's not starting games for a reason.
Exactly, he's underperforming. That's why you won't probably see him go into the England squad for the World Cup because he hasn't been playing well enough at club level. I don't think that Southgate will recall him, you know. And we need, if Jaden wants to go there too, I mean, it's not a shoe in for him to make that squad, so he'll need to get back into form in the final five games for United. A good performance at Anfield on Tuesday night wouldn't do any harm for Jaden Egan in a high profile game like that. He has the ability. Let's see him prove it.
Well, I have to say we're not optimistic about Tuesday night. I think we're 7-1 with the bookies to win that game, which is just unprecedented for a Man United team in any game. Certainly in the Ferguson era, anyway. But I don't fancy our chances. Liverpool are on fire at the moment. They've just they're 1 point off the top of the league. They're into the Champions League semi-finals. They've won the League Cup. They've beaten Man City in the FA Cup semi-final. They're into that final. They're just a team that's scoring goals at the moment, winning most of their games, entertaining their fans, and with us coming to Anfield, they really, really fancy it. I'm sure they're aware that it's a United team who doesn't give 100%. They certainly will. I think the crowd will really enjoy, putting Man United to the sword. Um, Ronaldo will probably have to score 5 goals for us just to get a draw in this game. How do you see it?
Yeah, it's a terrifying prospect going to play away from home against Liverpool. We were humiliated at home against Liverpool, but it's the lack of character in the dressing room that's most appalling to me, Kyle. In the old days, can you imagine Roy Keane getting the guys up for a game like this and stressing the importance to the fans? What we don't want is sheer humiliation and embarrassment on Tuesday night. We want 11 players, whoever the 11 players are named, to give a performance and show that they care for the club. The fans spend a lot of money all year round trying to support the team and lift the team. But as you have seen what happened with Pogba yesterday, the fans are just getting to the end of their tether by watching this rubbish week in and week out. But let's not be embarrassed. Let's the next time you do a podcast, let's see that some of the players have tried to protect their reputation, our reputation. I mean, we used to have a reputation at Old Trafford being practically unbeatable there. Now the teams like Norwich come to Old Trafford and think they can win before they set their feet on the pitch. How times have changed. It's so depressing.
Yeah, nobody's afraid to come to Old Trafford anymore. Um, if it's a straight choice between Pogba and Matic to play at Anfield, it has to be Matic every day of the week for me. I don't want to see Pogba again this season.
No, I agree. Absolutely. Absolutely. Matty showed a bit of emotion after the game yesterday because he'd announced previously in the week that he wasn't coming back next season, and he showed that he had a love for the club, and I think you're quite right. If he plays the rest of the season, even if he only plays 60 minutes because of his fitness, he will give what he has left, and he'll do it for his teammates and for the club. And that's all you can ask. Pogba just thinks about Pogba. He doesn't care at all. He will leave tomorrow if he could, as long as they paid him.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be. I would love to see Varane come back in for this game if possible, and possibly Fred as well, because we know we're going to need 11 players who are going to actually give absolutely everything, and we know we'll get that from Fred. I know he's not the long term option in midfield if the fans are making the decisions, but yeah, I think in terms of this game on Tuesday night, I'd rather have Fred in there than Pogba. We need to have a really solid defensive midfielder. We can't play Pogba, Lingard, and Fernandes again. There needs to be a bit of steel in the middle of the park, and people who are going to win the ball back. So yeah, I think we probably have to go with Fred and Matic, and then probably Bruno ahead of them. Uh, I don't
Yeah, well,
see.
in his press conference on Friday, he said there was a possibility of Varane coming back on Tuesday night, but he didn't seem to indicate that either Fred or Scotty would be back on Tuesday night, which is disappointing because Fred, as we've alluded to already, he has the industry and he'll give you that commitment. And I would certainly like to see him instead of Pogba on Tuesday night.
Yeah, definitely. McTominay's been in very poor form lately. I'm not sure that he would be a great option to come in after being out for a couple of weeks to come into a game like this and an atmosphere like that might be too much for McTominay given how he's been playing lately. So I wouldn't be confident in him putting in a good performance in this game. Then again, it doesn't really matter who we select. I think we're going to get beat here. If by some miracle we get a draw in this game, it'll feel like a win, won't it?
Oh, it would, but I mean, Liverpool have too much to lose, Kyle. They're only a point behind City, and they have to win every game and hope that City drop points somewhere. So they're going to be up from the very first minute. So I don't see much hope at all of us winning the game. A draw would be unbelievable result, but it would need 100% performance from every single player listed in the first 11. And are they doing that at the moment? Do they care? It doesn't look like it.
No, definitely not. Yeah, we're going to need Ronaldo to be absolutely clinical if he manages to get any chances at all. Um, he might get another good supply from a corner from Telles to get an opportunity to score a header again. But then again, Telles will probably give away 2 goals at the other end, so it won't matter.
That's it. That's it. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And is Liverpool have great options on the bench. We've talked before in podcasts. They've a lot of important games and a lot of tournaments that they can win. And the manager is a clever guy. He'll if they get 2 or 3 up against United, he'll use his bench and rest them for bigger games coming up. I don't think Liverpool consider United a big game anymore, and I'm embarrassed saying that. It just looks like it to me. And the bookies' odds, as you've stated, clearly reflect that. The United are no opposition to Liverpool Football Club.
Yeah, this is just another game which Liverpool will see as a routine victory. Really, in all honesty, I suspect that most people inside that club at Old Trafford will know that the likelihood is we will lose this game, and they probably delay the announcement of the new manager until the morning after that game to kind of change the story, change the narrative. So I suspect that's what they'll do. Rather than announcing the manager on Monday and then defeat Liverpool overshadowing it, they want it to be the other way around, won't they?
Yeah, it just highlights the importance of the media and the social media and how that works. That they don't want to see the club further damaged. As you say, tactically, the best opportunity to announce a new manager would be after a poor result at Anfield to try to change the narrative and move on to some positivity. That's all we can hope for this week.
Yeah, and it's the worst kept secret in world football. We all know who the manager's going to be. He's currently involved in the KNVB Cup final against PSV, and Ajax are currently 1-0 up in that game. Gravenberch has given them a 23rd minute lead. That's a guy who Bayern Munich are going to sign this summer, by promising midfielder. So yeah, apparently Ajax want to get this final out of the way, hopefully a win for them, and then they'll allow United to announce him as the new manager, and that's what we need. We need positivity from somewhere. We need something to look forward to because this season has been absolutely depressing. So once we get that new manager announced, then we can start looking towards who's coming in and who's leaving, and get the decision making process underway, and finally start looking forward to August.
Yeah, we have to give the fan base a lift because everybody's down at the moment, and understandably so. This new manager has to be given the time and the operational tools, and the transfers has to be a major part of it. He can't be dictated to by people upstairs buying overinflated players at the end of their careers. He must be have major influence. That's one. I'm sure he's putting that in his contract that he has to be given the authority to be involved with the people he wants. If he's building from scratch, And let's face it, Kyle, it is from scratch. We've got such a poor squad there at the moment, and you've quite rightly said there's so much dead wood's going to go out. At least 4 or 5, possibly 6, 7 players. We have a few players out in loan. Let's get them back and let the new manager have a look at them and give him a proper chance. Don't treat him with disrespect by not letting him have a positive involvement in the selection of new people coming into the club, and that includes his backroom team. There's a lot of ex-players and a lot of hangers on at Old Trafford, and everybody knows who they are. Let this guy turn the thing round and do it his way.
Yeah, as Fabrizio Romano says, he doesn't want to be a dictator. He just wants to make decisions together with the club, and that's what he's used to at Ajax. That's the system that they have. He works with the director of football and the CEO to bring in players and sell players, and that's all he wants to have at Old Trafford. Doesn't want to make every single decision on his own. He just wants to be part of the decision making process. And the problem has been at United that we bring in players um, like Ronaldo and Cavani and Sanchez, probably without the manager being consulted, just because of the players having commercial value, wanting to sign the biggest names possible on the biggest contracts, because they're well known on their commercial value. We've seen something come out this week that from the Athletic that Joe Glazer's favorite players are the ones that are the biggest names. And he like wants to, and over the course of the last 8 years, he's wanted to keep them at the club. I mean, what kind of a business model is that? When these players are underperforming in the team, and the owner says he likes these players because they're big names and they're the big commercial value, so I want to keep them there. I mean, even for someone like him who's not a football person, surely that doesn't make any kind of business sense.
No, well, that led to the comment from Van Gaal the other week when he said that United was a commercial club. He didn't encourage his Dutch colleague to leave Holland and go to Old Trafford purely for that reason. That obviously various managers since the departure of Ferguson have wanted players and have been told no and had players selected for them, and that's just a damning indictment of the poor running of the club by the as you people like Woodward, etc., as you've alluded to. The Garners don't care. It's all about money for them. Their dividend twice. The last one in March was £23 million. They're just raking that money out of the club, and we have no silver. I mean, Matic probably thought in 2017 when he arrived that he would win something, but when he arrived, they won no silverware at all while he was there. And I can't see them winning anything at all until this new guy's given a proper chance to change things.
Yeah, that policy has to end. I mean, other players that like I could mention is Schweinsteiger, Falcao, Di Maria. All that needs to stop. We need to be signing, young players in positions where we need them, and players who fit the manager's style of play. If he says I need an attacking right back, I need a defensive midfielder who's good on the ball, and when I need a number 9 who can hold the ball up. Need to go out and get those players who are 25 or under. I'm not trying to sign the biggest names possible. If that policy does not change, then the results on the pitch are not going to change, and we're going to continue to win absolutely nothing. And we're going to go 26 years again without a league title. It needs to change, and it needs to change now.
I agree with you 100%. You've summed it up as I would have put it. And the season ticket holders will get fed up at some stage. It's just you work hard all week, Kyle, and you travel. Our away support has always been marvellous. They're getting very disillusioned going to places like Goodison Park. They had to go with some of the players there too, and it's an indication that it's just gone on too long. And if the bureaucracy at the top of the club doesn't realise that and give the new manager a fair chance, I agree with you. We'll not see any silverware at all of any kind within 5, 6 years.
Yeah, the good thing about Dutch managers is that they don't care what age players are. They're not afraid to start players who are as young as 17 or 18. And that's great news for someone like James Garner, who we've been talking about all season, who's had an excellent season on loan at Nottingham Forest. So someone like him would have a great chance of playing his way into the first team with a Dutch manager coming in who's accustomed to giving young players a chance at Ajax.
Yeah, that's the hopeful. That's the thing we have to build on. because he looks like a very classy player to me. Playing in the FA Cup against Liverpool and Arsenal wasn't out of his depth at all. Seems to be able to control the game and switch it, and very self-confident, as we've talked about before, with corners and free kicks. And surely this, when the new manager comes in, will stop the rut of left backs taking corners from both sides of the pitch. Surely he'll find someone with practice regularly in training all the way along. See some clues of some good football.
They've been excellent from set pieces this season. I checked the stats. Just a few weeks back, on Ajax had scored something like 14 goals from corners. So that certainly bodes well. And he's a details man. Every session is planned out. Just like Guardiola, right down to the drinks breaks. The timing of those is planned. And he wants every player to play a specific role in the team. He can change formations in game. When you're out of possession, in possessions, change formations. So it's very, 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 very detailed. I heard a story that some of the players were asking Donny van der Beek, what is he like as a coach? And the feedback they got from Donny was that he's very detailed. The sessions are very, very intense. And one strike and you're out was the feedback that they got, apparently.
Well, that's very positive and it's innovative. And if he has the ability to read a game and see the need to change it quickly, a lot of the managers we have had post Ferguson wouldn't make a change. They were afraid to make a change, left a change far too late. Hopefully, this guy will be a step up from that. And the other thing, of course, is Kyle, let him choose his own captain as the new manager of the club, and let all the fan base know who is his selected penalty taker. Let us get on a professional level with the top teams again. We've fallen behind in so many areas, and there are two of them.
Well, that is something we're certainly going to keep an eye on during the preseason tour. I remember when even Van Gaal came in, a new captain had to be chosen, and I think he went for Wayne Rooney after the final preseason game. So it's something that the media are going to be pressuring him on. Because they know that Harry Maguire has been under pressure all season as a failing captain. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with that. We certainly hope that he doesn't stick with Harry Maguire. Hopefully he's decisive on that and he makes the right choice. So it's not going to be a new signing most likely. And the current crop of players, there's not many leaders there, is there? I mean, you're literally choosing between the goalkeeper, Ronaldo, or Fernandes, aren't you? And I mean, and Fernandes is woefully out of form.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult, but and Haig is his own man, and he'll assess it on the basis of what he sees, and if we're going to have any faith in this guy, and he has a reputation of being a decision maker and a positive decision maker, we'll go with what he says. I'm sure he'll rationalise it in his own mind and let us know at a press conference exactly why he's chosen to go down that route, and I'll back him on that.
Definitely. So we look forward to next season with some optimism, but caution as well, considering that the last 10 years have been full of promise, but those hopes have been dashed very quickly. So hopefully things will change. At some point, a manager's going to come in and we will win the league again, but we're not expecting that to happen. We have to be patient with this manager, of course, as well. Klopp and Guardiola didn't succeed right away, so we need to give him a few seasons, and then we'll judge him after 3 or 4 seasons. But we have to judge him. We can only judge him as an individual if he's given the tools from the board that are necessary. If we run into a situation again where they're overruling him in terms of players leaving and players coming in, and they're not spending that much money in transfer windows in the summer, then we can't really blame him for not succeeding. But if he's given all the tools necessary, then we can judge him as an individual after 3 or 4 seasons.
Absolutely, agree entirely. The first thing that the fans will notice is if the new manager has 11 players that are obviously playing for him. And if the standard all around the pitch increases, where people start calling to each other, telling people when they've time, basic things like that, which are routine in normal football, but at the professional level, that has to be every week, home and away. And I have great hope that this guy has the promise to do that.
Yeah, so do I. Okay, guys, subscribe to the podcast, like the video, and comment your thoughts down below. On the Norwich game, Ronaldo and Ten Hag, and any other topics you want to discuss. So it's been an absolute pleasure to have you back on the show again, Nigel.
Yeah, thanks very much. See you soon.
Okay, see you Tuesday.